I was born in a small mountain town in Austria, winter of 1941. My mother told me the story years later when I was old enough to understand. She said it still bothered her, even decades after the war ended. The town was called Eisental, Ice Valley, appropriate name. It sat in a narrow gorge between two mountains, a place where winter arrived in October and didn't leave until May. Maybe 200 people lived there, most of them farmers or forestry workers. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets were impossible to keep. When my mother went into labor, it was the middle of a blizzard. My father had been conscripted months earlier, sent to the Eastern Front. She was alone except for her sister, my Aunt Greta, who'd come to stay with her for the final weeks of pregnancy. The local midwife was a woman named Frau Kellner. She delivered babies in Eisental for 40 years, brought most of the current generation into the world. People trusted her completely. She lived alone in a stone house at the edge of town, near the old cemetery. Her husband had died in the First War, and her only son had been killed in France in 1940. Aunt Greta went to fetch her around midnight. The snow was coming down so thick you could barely see 5 meters ahead. She said it took her 20 minutes to walk what should have been a 5-minute journey. When she reached Frau Kellner's house, the door was open. Not just unlocked, standing wide open, snow drifting into the entrance hall. All the lights were off. Greta called out, no response. She stepped inside, shaking snow from her coat, calling Frau Kellner's name. The house was silent, cold, like no one had been there for hours. She found Frau Kellner in the kitchen, sitting at the table in complete darkness, just sitting there, not moving. Frau Kellner, Greta said, "Are you all right?" The old woman turned her head slowly. Greta said her eyes looked strange, distant, like she was seeing something very far away. "They're here," Frau Kellner whispered. "They came back, all of them, all the ones I lost." Greta didn't understand. She explained that my mother needed help, that the baby was coming. Frau Kellner stood up without a word, gathered her medical bag, and followed Greta out into the storm. They made the walk back in silence. Frau Kellner moved mechanically like someone sleepwalking. When they arrived at our house, she went straight to work, efficient, professional, focused. Within 2 hours, I was born, healthy, no complications. But here's what my mother remembered most clearly. As Frau Kellner was cleaning up, packing her instruments, she kept looking toward the window. The window was covered with frost, completely opaque. You couldn't see anything through it. But Frau Kellner kept staring at it, her expression unreadable. "What is it?" my mother asked. "The children," Frau Kellner said softly. "They're standing outside. All the children I couldn't save. They come sometimes to watch, to remind me." My mother felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold room. "There's no one outside," she said. Frau Kellner turned to look at her. "Not for you," she said, "but I see them. Every child I lost over 40 years, stillbirths, complications, fevers that took them in the first week. They're all out there now. They always come when a new one is born, to see if this one will stay." She finished packing her bag, pulled on her coat. At the door, she paused. "Your son will be fine," she said. "He has strong lungs, strong heart. He'll survive the war, survive what's coming. But the others," she looked back toward that frosted window, "the others aren't so sure yet. They're still deciding." Then she left, walking out into the blizzard. My mother sent Greta to check on her the next day. The house was empty. Frau Kellner was gone. Her clothes were still in the wardrobe. Her medical bag sat on the kitchen table, but she'd vanished. They searched for 3 days, found nothing. No tracks, no signs of where she'd gone. The snow had covered everything. 2 weeks later, a forestry worker found her body in the woods, about 1 kilometer from town. She was sitting against a tree, her eyes open, her face peaceful, frozen solid. The doctor who examined her said she'd been dead since the night I was born. But that was impossible. My mother and Greta had both seen her. She'd delivered me. She'd spoken to them. She'd walked out of the house under her own power. The official explanation was confusion, stress, the trauma of birth causing false memories. But my mother never believed that. She remembered too clearly. Remembered the coldness of Frau Kellner's hands when she touched her. Remembered the way she'd stared at that window, seeing things that no one else could see. She told me once, late at night after too much wine, that she sometimes wondered if Frau Kellner had actually been alive that night, or if the children she'd lost had sent something back in her place, something that looked like her, walked like her, delivered bobbies like her, something that belonged to the snow and the darkness and the spaces between life and death, where midwives spend their whole lives working. I'm 78 years old now, still alive, just like Frau Kellner predicted. But sometimes, on winter nights when the snow is falling thick, I look out my window and wonder what I'd see if I could see the way she did. Wonder if those children are still out there, still watching, still deciding. There was an astronomical observatory about 10 kilometers from my town, built in the 1920s on a mountain peak. The scientists had abandoned it when the war started. Too exposed, too vulnerable, too far from anything useful. By 1942, it was just an empty building with a telescope pointed at stars no one was watching anymore. My friend Klaus and I discovered it during the summer when we were both 14. We'd been hiking in the mountains, exploring like boys do, and stumbled across the access road. Followed it up until we reached the observatory, a white dome sitting on the peak like a giant mushroom. The door was locked, but the windows were broken. We climbed inside, found ourselves in a fascinating place. Astronomical charts on the walls, old equipment, books about stars and planets and things neither of us understood, and the telescope itself, a massive instrument pointed through an opening in the roof. We went back several times over that summer, made it our secret place, brought books to read, pretended we were scientists making important discoveries. Then winter came, and the mountains became impossible to reach. We forgot about the observatory until the following spring. Klaus suggested we go back in March of 1943. The snow had melted enough to make the road passable. We hiked up on a Saturday, both of us excited to see our secret place again. But when we arrived, something felt different. The door was open, not broken, properly open like someone had unlocked it. We approached carefully, calling out to see if anyone was there. No response. We went inside. The main room looked the same as we'd left it, but there was a smell now, faint but distinct, like old paper and something chemical. Photographic developer, maybe. Klaus found the photographs first. They were spread across one of the work tables, dozens of them, black and white prints showing the night sky. Stars, constellations, nothing unusual. Except for one detail. In every photograph in the same position relative to the stars was a dark shape. Not a cloud, not a plane, just a shape. Irregular, wrong somehow. "What is that?" Klaus asked, holding one of the prints up to the light. I didn't know. It looked almost like a tear in the photograph, but it was too consistent across all the images, too deliberately placed. We looked at the telescope. Someone had been using it recently. The adjustment wheels were in different positions. There were fresh fingerprints in the dust on the eyepiece. Klaus looked through it. The telescope was pointed at a section of sky I didn't recognize. He stood there for a long moment, not moving, not saying anything. "Klaus," I said. He stepped back from the telescope quickly. His face was pale. "There's something up there," he whispered. "What do you mean?" "Something in the sky. It's not moving, it's just there, blocking the stars like a hole." I looked, he was right. Through the telescope I could see a section of sky that was darker than the rest. Not a cloud, not empty space, just darkness, absolute darkness, like looking into a well with no bottom. "Maybe it's a problem with the telescope," I suggested. The lens could be damaged. But we both knew that wasn't it. We left quickly after that. Didn't talk much on the way down. When we reached town, Klaus went to his house and I went to mine. We didn't discuss going back. 3 days later, Klaus disappeared. His parents said he'd left for school in the morning and never arrived. The whole town searched. Mountains, forests, caves. Nothing. The police investigated, but they were stretched thin. The war was going badly by then, and they had more important things to worry about than one missing boy. I knew where he'd gone. I waited a week before hiking back up to the observatory alone. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe Klaus conducting some experiment. Maybe nothing at all. The door was closed this time, locked. I climbed through the window like we'd done the first time. The photographs were still there, but there were more now, dozens more, and Klaus was in them. Not all of them, just some. Standing in the observatory looking up through the open roof. His face was visible in the starlight captured in long exposures, expression frozen, eyes wide. In each successive photograph, he was in a different position, standing, kneeling, lying on the floor, always looking up. In the last photograph, he was gone, just empty floor and stars. I looked through the telescope. That dark shape was still there, but it was bigger now, closer, covering more stars than before. And I swear I could see something moving inside it, not flying, not falling, just moving, writhing, like something alive in the deepest part of space where nothing should be alive. I ran. Didn't go back, didn't tell anyone what I'd seen. What could I say? That my friend had been taken by something in the stars, that photographs showed him vanishing. They'd think I was mad. Klaus was never found. Eventually, the police declared him a runaway. His parents moved away after the war ended. The observatory sat empty for decades before being demolished in the 1970s. But I still think about it sometimes. About that dark shape in the sky. About Klaus standing there, looking up, being pulled into photographs until he disappeared completely. I wonder if he's still up there somehow, still looking, still watching that thing that blocks the stars. And I wonder if it's still growing, still spreading, still swallowing light, still hungry. During the war, soldiers would write letters home. Everyone knows this. But what people don't talk about is what happened when those letters didn't stop coming, even after the soldier died. There was a family in my town, the Hoffmans. They had one son, Martin, who'd been drafted in 1940 and sent to fight in North Africa. He was 22, good-looking boy, worked in his father's carpentry shop before the war. Martin wrote home regularly, once a week at minimum. His letters were cheerful, optimistic. He talked about the desert, about his comrades, about small, funny moments that happened between the fighting. His mother kept every letter in a wooden box, read them over and over. In April 1943, they received notification that Martin had been killed in Tunisia. An artillery strike, nothing left to bury. His mother was devastated, stopped eating, stopped sleeping, just sat in Martin's old room holding his letters, crying. Then, 2 weeks after the death notification arrived, they received another letter from Martin. It was dated after his reported death. The handwriting was his. The tone was his. He talked about the weather, about missing home, about hoping the war would end soon. His father assumed it was a mistake. Letters took time to arrive. This one had probably been written before Martin died, but delayed in the military postal system. But then another letter arrived, and another, every week just like before, all dated after his death, all in his handwriting. His mother convinced herself he was still alive, that the death notification was the mistake, that her boy was fine and still writing home. His father was less certain. He compared the new letters to the old ones. The handwriting matched, but something about the content felt off. The details were vague. The stories didn't quite connect to each other. It was like reading letters from someone who was remembering how Martin wrote rather than Martin himself. The weekly letters continued for months. His mother responded to each one, sending her own letters to Martin's military address. She filled them with news from town, with encouragement, with love. None of her letters came back undeliverable. By winter, his father couldn't take it anymore. He went to the military administration office, demanded to see proof of Martin's death. They showed him the official records, casualty report, witness statements from Martin's unit, medical documentation. Martin Hoffman had definitely died in April. He came home and showed his wife the documents. She refused to believe them, showed him the letters. "Explain these if he's dead," she demanded. He couldn't. In January 1944, Martin's mother decided to visit him. She'd saved money. She'd arranged travel papers. She was going to North Africa to see her son. Death notification be damned. His father tried to stop her, tried to make her understand, but she was beyond reason now. She left on a Tuesday morning. She never came back. The official explanation was that she died in a traffic accident in Italy while trying to reach North Africa, but there were no details. No body returned. No confirmation. His father waited, kept living in that house alone, kept all of Martin's letters in that wooden box. The letters stopped coming in March 1944, almost exactly 1 year after Martin's reported death. But in April, a new letter arrived, not to Martin's father, to Martin. The return address was his mother's. The handwriting was hers. The letter talked about how she'd finally found him, how they were together now, how he shouldn't worry about home anymore. It ended with a single line: "Tell your father we're waiting for him too." Martin's father showed that letter to my father, asked what he thought it meant. My father didn't know what to say. Martin's father died in his sleep that night. Heart attack, the doctor said. He was only 53. After his death, my father helped clean out the Hoffman house, found the wooden box full of letters, found all of Martin's letters from after his death, found the final letter from Martin's mother. He burned them all, said it was the only way to make sure they stopped. But before he did, he read them. He told me years later what they'd said. The later letters, the ones from deep into the impossibility of Martin still being alive. They talked less and less about Africa, less about the war, more about darkness, about waiting, about cold sand that felt like snow, about a place where everyone who died far from home ended up, a place where letters could still be written, because that was the only connection left to the world of the living, a place where Martin's mother had gone, where she'd found her son, where both of them were waiting for Martin's father to join them. My father never told anyone else about this, said it was better forgotten, but he made me promise something. If I ever joined the military, if I ever went to war, I should make sure my letters stopped when I died. Make sure nothing could use my handwriting to call my family into darkness. Make sure the dead stayed silent. There was a photographer in my town named Herr Dietrich. He ran a small studio where people came to have portraits taken, weddings, christenings, family photographs. He was good at his work, patient, professional. His studio was filled with samples of his photography, black and white portraits of townspeople going back decades. In 1943, the military contracted him to take identification photographs of all the young men being drafted. They needed formal portraits for records. Herr Dietrich did this work in the evenings, after his regular business closed. My older brother Joseph was called up in August. He went to have his photograph taken on a Thursday evening. I went with him. The studio felt different at night. The samples on the walls looked strange in lamplight. All those faces staring down. Generations of townspeople captured in silver and paper. Herr Dietrich positioned Joseph in front of a plain backdrop, adjusted the lights, set up his camera on its tripod. Don't smile, he instructed. Military photographs should be serious, dignified. Joseph tried to keep a straight face, but he was nervous. This photograph would be used for his military documents, would be the image they'd send to our parents if something happened to him. Herr Dietrich took 3 exposures. Click, click, click. Then he nodded, satisfied. Come back tomorrow, he said. The prints will be ready. We left. Joseph was quiet on the walk home. I asked if he was all right. Did you see them? He asked. See what? The photographs on the walls. Some of them looked wrong. I hadn't noticed, but then I hadn't been paying attention. The next evening, Joseph went back to collect his photographs. I stayed home this time. He returned an hour later, white-faced, holding an envelope. Don't look at them, he said. Promise me you won't look. He went straight to his room, wouldn't talk about what had upset him, wouldn't show anyone the photographs. 2 days later, he left for military training. Our mother cried. Our father remained stoic. Joseph hugged everyone goodbye, then climbed onto the truck that would take him to the train station. As the truck pulled away, he looked back at us through the rear opening. His face was expressionless, empty, like all the emotion had been drained out of him. That was the last time I saw my brother alive. He died 6 months later on the Eastern Front, a routine engagement that went wrong. His body was never recovered. After we received the death notification, my mother wanted to see his photograph, the military identification photograph that Herr Dietrich had taken. She needed to see his face one more time. I remembered Joseph's warning, remembered how he'd looked when he'd returned from the studio that second evening, but our mother was insistent. I found the envelope in Joseph's old room, opened it. There were 3 prints inside, just as Herr Dietrich had promised. All showed Joseph in military uniform, standing against that plain backdrop. But the expressions were different. In the first photograph, Joseph looked normal, serious but alive, his eyes focused on the camera. In the second photograph, his expression had changed. Not much, just slightly. His eyes were less focused, his face more slack, like he was fatting somehow. In the third photograph, he looked dead. Not literally dead, no injuries, no violence, but empty. His eyes were open but saw nothing. His face was blank. He looked like a photograph of a corpse dressed in a uniform. I didn't show them to my mother, told her the envelope was empty. She didn't believe me, demanded to see. We argued. Eventually, my father intervened, took the envelope, and burned it without looking inside. But I kept thinking about those photographs, about the progression they showed, about what Joseph had seen that had frightened him so much. A week later, I went to Herr Dietrich's studio. It was evening after closing, but I could see light through the windows. I knocked. He answered, looking annoyed at the interruption. But when he saw it was me, his expression softened. I'm sorry about your brother, he said. I want to ask you something, I said, about the photographs you took. He stepped aside to let me in. The studio was dark except for the light from his workroom in the back. All those portraits on the walls looked down at us from the shadows. What do you want to know? He asked. When you took Joseph's photograph, what did you see? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to one of the walls where recent military portraits hung in neat rows, found Joseph's portrait, one I hadn't seen before, a 4th print that Herr Dietrich had kept for his records. In this photograph, Joseph was transparent, barely visible. You could see the backdrop through him, see the studio equipment beyond. He looked like a ghost, like someone who was already gone. I see the truth, Herr Dietrich said quietly. The camera sees it. The lens doesn't lie. Some of these boys, he gestured at the wall of military portraits. Some of them are already gone before they leave. The war has already taken them. They just don't know it yet. He pointed at 3 other photographs, then 4 more, then a dozen. All showed the same thing. Young men fatting away, becoming transparent, vanishing. Did you tell them? I asked. Did you warn them? Would it matter? He said. Would it change anything? The war takes who it takes. The camera just shows me ahead of time. I looked at all those fatting faces, all those boys from my town who'd gone to war and never come back. Had they known? Had they seen what Joseph had seen? Why did you keep these? I asked. Why hang them on your wall? So I remember, he said. So someone remembers them as they really were. Not the official portraits that get sent to families. Not the lies we tell ourselves about death and glory. But the truth. The moment when a living boy becomes a ghost. I left without saying anything else. What could I say? Herr Dietrich died in 1945, right before the war ended. His studio closed. All those photographs were destroyed when the building was torn down. But I still remember them. Those fatting faces. Those boys who'd been taken by the war before they even left home. And sometimes I wonder what I'd see if I looked in a mirror and truly saw what the camera sees. If I'd see myself fatting. If I'd see how much of me is already gone. How much the war took even though I never left my mountain town. My town had a train station. Small, just a platform and a ticket office. Most days, nothing stopped. Trains just passed through on their way to larger cities. But during the war, we saw different trains. Military transports, freight cars, long lines of them moving east or west depending on how the war was going. We learned not to watch too closely, not to ask questions. Some things were better left unknown. In the winter of 1944, a new type of train started passing through. Always at night, always moving slowly. The cars were sealed, windowless, painted black. They made almost no sound, just a faint rumble that you felt more than heard. The first time I saw one, I was walking home from a friend's house around midnight. I heard the rails humming before I saw anything. Then the train appeared, emerging from the darkness like something rising from deep water. It was long, maybe 30 cars, moving at walking speed, and it was completely silent except for that low rumble. No engine noise, no screeching of wheels, just that vibration that made your teeth ache. As it passed, I noticed something. The cars were leaking, not water or oil, something else. Something that looked like smoke but moved wrong. It drifted down from the seams of the sealed doors, pooled along the rails, then slowly dispersed. I stood there watching until the last car passed, felt strange afterward, cold in a way that had nothing to do with winter temperature, empty. The trains came every few nights after that, always around the same time, always moving slowly, always silent. People in town started having problems sleeping, nightmares. They'd wake up exhausted, feeling like they'd been traveling all night even though they'd never left their beds. Some complained of dreams where they were on trains, sealed in dark cars, moving toward destinations they couldn't name. My mother started leaving our windows closed at night, even though the house got stuffy. Said she didn't want that smoke, if that's what it was, drifting inside. The station master, Herr Becker, tried to find out what the trains were carrying. He sent inquiries to military administration, never received answers. He tried flagging one down to inspect it. The train didn't stop, just kept moving at that same slow pace. One night, he decided to jump onto one of the cars as it passed, wanted to see inside, wanted to know what justified these nightly passages through our town. Several people saw him do it, saw him run alongside the train, grab a ladder on the side of one car, pull himself up. He climbed to the roof, presumably looking for an access hatch. The train continued slowly out of town and into the tunnel that led to the next valley. Becker was still on top of it when it entered the darkness. The train emerged on the other side 2 hours later, kept going east. Becker wasn't on it anymore. They searched the tunnel, searched the tracks for kilometers in both directions, found nothing. No body, no blood, no sign of where he'd gone. The trains continued passing through, every few nights, always slow, always silent. Then in March 1945, they stopped coming. The last one passed through on a Tuesday night. After that, nothing. Just normal military transports during the day. Regular freight, nothing unusual. But people in town still had the dreams, still woke up feeling like they'd been traveling, still felt that strange coldness that had started when the black trains began passing through. Herr Becker's wife reported seeing him sometimes, never up close, always at a distance, standing near the station at night, watching the tracks, waiting for something. When people approached, he'd turn and walk away, not running, not hiding, just walking with that same slow, steady pace the trains had moved. And when they followed, he'd reach the tunnel entrance and step inside, disappear into the darkness. They'd search, never find him. This happened maybe a dozen times over the years, always the same, always at night, always near the station, always ending with him walking into that tunnel and vanishing. The last reported sighting was in 1953. After that, nothing. Either he stopped appearing or people stopped talking about it. But the tunnel remained, still does. It's abandoned now. The rail line was rerouted in the 1960s, but you can still walk through if you're brave enough. I did once about 10 years ago. Wanted to see if there was anything strange about it, any explanation for where Becker had gone, for what those trains had been carrying. The tunnel is just a tunnel, stone walls, curved ceiling, empty tracks, nothing unusual. Except for the cold. Even in summer, the tunnel is freezing. Your breath fogs, your skin prickles, and there's that vibration, faint, almost imperceptible, like distant rails humming under the weight of a train that's not there. I didn't stay long. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, like standing on tracks while something enormous approaches, like being in the path of something that can't be stopped or avoided. I walked out quickly, didn't look back, haven't returned. But sometimes at night, when I can't sleep, I wonder about those trains, about where they were going, about what they were carrying in those sealed black cars, about whether they ever reached their destination, or if they're still moving, still traveling through tunnels that connect places that shouldn't be connected, still leaking that strange smoke that makes people dream of traveling, still carrying passengers who got on willingly or unwillingly and never got off, still moving slowly through the darkness, forever. During the war, children created their own games. They'd play soldier, play resistance fighter, play air raid. The war was so present in our lives that even play became about survival. In my town, children developed a game they called the Frozen One. I don't know who invented it or when it started. It just appeared one winter, passed from child to child like a song or a rhyme. The rules were simple. At night, after dark, children would gather in the town square. They'd choose one person to be the Frozen One. That person would stand perfectly still in the center of the square while the others hid throughout town. The Frozen One would count to 100, then begin searching. But here was the rule that made the game strange. The Frozen One had to move slowly. No running, no sudden movements, just a steady, measured walk. Like someone who'd been in the cold so long they'd forgotten how to move naturally. When the Frozen One found someone, they'd touch them and that person would freeze in place. Had to stand perfectly still until the game ended. The last person found one and became the Frozen One for the next round. My younger sister Anna loved this game. She played it constantly through the winter of 1943. Would come home late, frozen herself from standing in the cold, refusing to tell our mother where she'd been. I thought it was stupid, a game about freezing in winter, when people were actually freezing on the front lines. It seemed disrespectful. But Anna insisted it was important, said the game kept something away, didn't explain what, Just said that as long as children played, as long as someone was always the frozen one, something bad wouldn't happen. I asked what would happen if they stopped playing. She looked at me seriously. This was unusual for Anna, who was normally cheerful and silly. Then the real frozen one would come, she said, and it wouldn't be a game anymore. I laughed, told her she was being dramatic. She didn't argue, just kept playing. Then in January, something happened that made me reconsider. A child went missing, a boy named Stefan, age 9. He'd been playing the frozen one with the usual group. According to the other children, he'd been hiding near the old church. When the game ended, they'd gone to find him. He was standing against the church wall, perfectly still, exactly how you were supposed to stand when you'd been caught. Except the game was over, he should have moved. The children called to him, he didn't respond. They approached, touched him. He was frozen, actually frozen. Solid ice. His skin was blue-white. His eyes were open but glazed over. His clothes were stiff with frost. The children ran, screaming for adults. By the time people arrived, Stefan had melted, thawed. No one could explain it properly, but he was normal again, alive, moving, confused about why everyone was staring at him. The doctor examined him, found nothing wrong, no frostbite, no damage. His core temperature was normal. There was no medical explanation for what the children had described. But the children insisted. Stefan had been frozen solid. They'd all seen it, all touched him. Stefan himself didn't remember. Said he'd been hiding, waiting for the game to end. Next thing he knew, adults were surrounding him and asking if he was all right. The town council banned the frozen one. Said it was dangerous. Said children should play safer games indoors. Parents enforced this strictly. For 3 nights, no children played in the square. The town was quiet, normal. On the 4th night, I heard something outside. A slow, rhythmic sound. Footsteps. Heavy, measured. Moving with that distinctive pace. The pace of someone who'd been in the cold too long. I looked out my window. Saw a figure in the square. Tall. Wearing what looked like winter clothes, moving in a slow circle as if searching for something. I watched for several minutes. The figure never stopped moving, never sped up or slowed down, just maintained that steady, frozen walk. Then Anna was beside me, also watching. "I told you," she whispered. "No one was the frozen one tonight, so the real one came." "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know. The older kids say it's been here forever, since before the war, since before the town. It comes when winter is deep and nothing is watching for it. The game keeps it occupied, keeps it playing instead of hunting." "That's insane." "Is it?" She pointed at the figure. "Then what is that?" I didn't have an answer. The figure circled the square 3 times. Then it stopped, stood completely still in the center. Its head turned slowly, scanning the buildings around the square, looking for something. Looking, I realized, for children to find, for people to touch and freeze and claim. The next morning, the town council quietly lifted the ban on the frozen one. Didn't explain why, just announced that children could play their traditional games if they wished. The children resumed playing that night. The figure never appeared again. Anna played until spring came, and the game naturally ended with warmer weather. She never told our mother about the real frozen one, never told anyone except me. She's still alive, lives in Munich now with her grandchildren. I asked her about it once, about 10 years ago. Did she really believe there was something in the square that winter, or had we both imagined it? She didn't answer directly. Just said that her grandchildren play different games now. Modern games, electronic games, nothing that involves standing still in town squares. Then she added very quietly, "I hope that's enough. I hope the old things have forgotten about us. But winter lasts a long time in the mountains, and some games aren't really games. They're treaties, agreements, ways of keeping something patient that would otherwise be hungry. I don't have grandchildren, never married, But sometimes I drive through my old town, especially in winter. Sometimes I park near the square and watch for a while. The children are gone now. The town is smaller, dying. Most young people have moved away. And on the coldest nights, when I'm alone in that square, I sometimes see something moving in the distance, between buildings, in the shadows. Something walking slowly, methodically, searching. Something that was held at bay by a children's game for one winter during the war. Something that might be getting impatient. Something frozen. The town hall had a basement that served as an archive, old records, birth certificates, property deeds, the accumulated paperwork of centuries. Very few people went down there. The town clerk maintained it, filed new documents occasionally, but mostly it sat undisturbed. In 1944, the military requisitioned the basement for storage. They needed secure spaces throughout the region to house documents related to the war effort, local logistics, supply records, personnel files. A young officer named Lieutenant Weber was assigned to manage the archive in our town. He was from Berlin, educated, serious, the kind of officer who followed regulations precisely. He spent his days organizing files in that basement, alone. The work was tedious but necessary. Someone had to maintain records, even if everyone else was focused on fighting. After about 3 weeks, Weber started acting strangely. He'd emerge from the basement looking pale, distracted. He'd stand in the town square for hours just staring at buildings, not thinking about anything specific, he said, just looking. The town clerk, Frau Schneider, asked if something was wrong, if the basement was unsuitable for his work. "Have you ever read the old records?" Weber asked her. "The ones from centuries ago." "Some," she admitted. "Why?" "They mention things, events, things that don't make sense." "What kind of things?" He didn't answer, just went back down to the basement. Frau Schneider mentioned this conversation to my father, who was on the town council. My father decided to check on Weber, made an excuse about needing to review property records, and went down to the basement. He found Weber sitting at a desk, surrounded by old documents, not the military files he was supposed to be organizing, historical records. Some of them looked ancient. "Lieutenant," my father said, "is everything all right?" Weber looked up slowly. "Did you know this town has been abandoned 4 times? "What?" 4 times in recorded history. Everyone left, just walked away from their homes and never came back. Then new people arrived, settled here, built on the ruins. Those people eventually left too. This has happened 4 times that we know of, possibly more before records began. My father didn't know this, didn't believe it. Weber showed him the documents, birth records that suddenly stopped, property deeds that were never transferred, just abandoned, parish records that ended mid-sentence and resumed decades later in different handwriting. "What does this mean?" my father asked. "I don't know, but I found something else." Weber stood, led my father to a far corner of the basement. There was a door there, small, wooden, very old. "That's always been locked," Frau Schneider had said. "Storage room for damaged records, nothing important." Weber had opened it. The room beyond was small, maybe 3 meters square, empty except for inscriptions on the walls. Not German, not any language my father recognized. The letters were carved deep into stone, done with care and precision. This wasn't graffiti, it was deliberate, important. "I had a professor friend translate it," Weber said. "From photographs I sent. Do you want to know what it says?" My father wasn't sure he did, but Weber told him anyway. "It's a warning, instructions actually, about how to leave this town safely when the time comes, about signs to watch for, about not looking back once you've started walking, about keeping children quiet during the journey, about arriving before the 3rd bell." "What bell?" "It doesn't specify. Just says you must leave when the first bell rings. Must be beyond the valley by the second bell. Must reach the next settlement before the third bell. This is insane, my father said. Medieval superstition. Weber nodded toward the document spread across his desk, then explained the pattern. Explain why this town empties every few hundred years. Explain why the records show people leaving everything behind, not taking possessions, not preparing, just leaving. My father couldn't explain it. He reported the conversation to the town council. They discussed it privately, decided Weber had been working too hard. The isolation of the basement, combined with reading disturbing historical records, had affected his mental state. They reassigned him, sent him to a different post. Weber objected, said he needed to finish his research, needed to understand the pattern, but orders were orders. He left within 2 days. Before he went, he gave my father a sealed envelope. If you hear a bell, he said, and you don't know where it came from, open this. My father put the envelope in his desk drawer and tried to forget about it. The war ended, life continued, the town survived. My father remained on the council. The envelope stayed in his drawer unopened. Years passed, decades. My father grew old. I took over his position on the town council. When he died in 1982, I inherited his desk, found the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper with instructions, very specific instructions about how to evacuate the town, which roads to use, what to avoid, where to gather, how to ensure everyone left safely. At the bottom, Weber had written, I translated more of the inscriptions. The warning isn't about invaders or natural disasters. It's about the town itself, about what this place becomes when winter is deep and the population thins too much, about what wakes up in the mountains and comes down to the valley. The old residents knew to leave before that happened. We've forgotten, but the cycle continues. The pattern remains, and eventually the bell will ring again. I've kept that paper, haven't shown it to anyone, haven't mentioned it in council meetings. But I listen carefully on winter nights, for bells, for sounds that don't belong, for signs that the pattern Weber discovered might be continuing. The town is smaller now than it was during the war, smaller than it was in my father's time. People keep leaving, the young especially. They go to cities, to other countries, never come back. We're thinning, shrinking, following the pattern Weber found in those old records. And sometimes I wonder if we're due. If this generation will be the one that has to follow those instructions, that has to leave everything behind and walk away before the third bell. If the cycle is finally completing again. If something in the mountains is waking up and remembering this town exists. My town sits in a gorge between two mountains. Wind is constant here. It flows down from the peaks, through the valley, carrying snow and cold and the smell of pine. You learn to live with it, learn to walk against it, learn to ignore it. But during the war, the wind changed, started carrying other things, sounds, words, memories. It began in the winter of 1942. People reported hearing voices in the wind, faint, distant, like conversations happening far away but somehow audible in the gusts that swept through town. At first, people assumed it was just acoustic tricks, sound traveling strangely through the mountains, echoes from neighboring valleys, nothing supernatural. But then people started recognizing the voices. They were men from the town, men who'd been drafted, men who died on the front. My father heard his brother's voice in March 1943. His brother had died at Stalingrad 2 months earlier. My father was walking home from work when a strong gust came down the valley, and in it, clear as day, he heard his brother say, "Tell mother I tried to come home." My father stopped walking, listened, waited for more, but the wind moved on and the voice was gone. He didn't tell my mother what he'd heard, didn't want to upset her, but he mentioned it to friends, found out he wasn't alone. Dozens of people had heard similar things, all voices of the dead, all carrying messages that never got delivered through proper channels. The priest tried to explain it as grief, as minds creating patterns from random noise, as the brain filling in meaning where none existed. But how did you explain multiple people hearing the same voice, hearing the same words? A woman named Frau Mueller heard her son in April. He died in North Africa. She heard him clearly in the wind that rattled her shutters. The sand was so hot, mother, I couldn't breathe. An old man named Herr Gerhardt heard his nephew. The boy had died in a submarine. His voice came in a strong gust that knocked over a trash bin. Water everywhere, so much water, no air left. The voices continued throughout 1943 and into 1944, always in the wind, always men from the town, always the dead. People started staying indoors on windy days, started keeping their windows closed, started avoiding the wind as much as possible, because hearing those voices, hearing what the dead wanted to say but couldn't, was unbearable. Then in the winter of 1945, right before the war ended, something changed. The wind started speaking in phrases, not individual voices anymore. Groups of them, dozens, hundreds, all speaking together, all saying the same thing. We're coming home, we're coming back. We're in the wind now, we'll always be in the wind. We'll blow through the valley forever. We'll speak to you forever. You'll never forget us. You'll never have silence. We'll never let you forget. The wind became deafening, not louder in volume, but louder in meaning. It was everywhere, constant, carrying those voices, those messages, those memories. People began having breakdowns. The baker stopped working, just sat in his house with his hands over his ears. The schoolteacher left town, said she couldn't teach children when the walls were full of voices. The doctor started prescribing sleeping medication to everyone who asked, no questions. My mother stopped going outside entirely. My father had to do all the shopping, all the errands. She just sat by the fire as far from windows as possible, trying to block out the sound. I was 12, old enough to understand that something terrible was happening, young enough that I didn't fully comprehend why. I remember asking my father why the voices were in the wind. He said, because we sent them away. We sent our men to fight in places so far from home that when they died, their spirits couldn't find their way back. They got lost in the space between where they died and where they belonged. The wind found them, carried them, brought them as close to home as they could get. And now they're trapped, traveling forever in the air, never resting, never silent, never at peace. The war ended in May. The voices didn't stop. They continued for months, through summer, into autumn. The wind never stopped carrying those voices, never stopped reminding us. Then in October, a strange calm settled over the valley. A week without wind, perfect stillness. People cautiously emerged from their houses, opened windows, started living again. On the seventh day of calm, the wind returned, but it was different. Gentler, quieter, and the voices were gone. Just normal wind, just air moving through the valley like it always had. No words, no messages, no memories. People wanted to believe it was over, that whatever had kept those voices trapped in the wind had finally released them, that the dead had moved on. But my father didn't believe that. He said the wind hadn't forgotten. It had just stopped speaking. All those voices were still there, still traveling in every gust, still present in every breeze, but silent now, waiting. He told me, listen carefully on the windiest days. When it's howling through the valley, when it's strong enough to knock you over, that's when you might hear them again. That's when the wind remembers how to speak. And if you listen very closely, you'll hear your name, because they know who still lives here. They know who remains. And someday when you die, your voice will join theirs, will travel in the wind, will blow through this valley forever, will never rest, will never fade. Will never stop speaking to the people who remain. I'm 78 now, still living in this town, still listening to the wind. And yes, sometimes I hear things, voices, words, names. Sometimes I hear my father's voice. He died 30 years ago. Sometimes I hear my mother, my brother who died in the war, friends, neighbors, everyone who ever lived here and died. They're all in the wind, all speaking, all traveling, all trapped in the air that moves through this valley. And I know that someday, maybe soon, my voice will join theirs. I'll die, and instead of rest, instead of peace, I'll become part of the wind, part of the eternal conversation, part of the voices that blow through the gorge between these two mountains. Forever speaking, forever traveling, forever trying to get home to a place I can never reach. Forever in the wind. Forever. Which story scared you the most? Leave a comment below and subscribe for more real horror stories.